I had some things pop up on me I hadn't seen before.
We're live.
I heard it. Thought it was a
I
ball.
know. No. All right, welcome in, everybody. We're going to get to the podcast here in just a little bit. So grab some popcorn, crack a beer, pound out some Slim Jims. Here we go. Now, I'm going to guess that since I played that like 4 times before we went live, that song is driving me nuts.
It is pretty catchy. I'll give you that.
I love it.
All right, so every Thursday, give or take holidays, we go live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. We want to make sure. Sorry, Rich, I'm going to cover your face for a little bit.
Bye-bye.
On YouTube, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, Twitter at MHRT Podcast. Questions, concerns, comments, go ahead and leave them for us. On Facebook, like and follow, and also right there on Twitch, MHRT Podcast. Well, I'm not used to having 6, so I wasn't sure whose face was going to be where. So as you can see, we have Mr. Boggins, who is officially a full-time part of the MHRT Podcast. So welcome, Mr. Boggins. Hey, full-time. We also have Mr. Richie Richey in the podcast today doing some guest hosting for us. And as everybody can see, Christy's back. Woo!
Yay.
Rich, you're commenting in the comments while you're on the podcast.
I called it too. Before we went on the air, I called it.
Okay, so I guess obviously everything's going to change a little bit because the Broncos aren't playing anymore. So the first thing we got to do is talk. We have to talk about the Raiders game. I know you don't want to, but we have to. It can be very short though, because there's a lot of stuff we got to get to. Like everything has happened already, and nobody's even gotten fired yet.
Or probably will.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Nobody.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Chris.
I'll go. Just because I hate the Raiders so much. I wasn't really actually. No, I didn't.
You picked them for you.
I wasn't actually mad that we lost. I mean, it didn't hurt my feelings just because of the fact that I think it was one of the best games that we played all season. So, Drew Lock, you know, I turned the game on and I was saying, you know what, we have to beat the Raiders. But in my eyes, I was just watching Drew Lock and I wanted to see what he could do. I wanted to see how he was going to finish. I wanted to see how everybody was playing together. Even though we were patched up, even though we had to go out there with not a full clan, it was a good game for us overall. I think they played some of their best football. So, of course, everyone, you could say, oh, they were playing the Raiders, but
yeah, this game was, in most people's eyes, is pretty meaningless, except for Raiders and Broncos fans who were just, anxious to see what a team decimated by injuries all season can go out and do against a division rival. To me, this kind of seemed like me personally, it took me back to week 1 where I visualized Vic Fangio throwing that boomerang of, working on the timeout situation. And it took 16 weeks for it to come back and just hit him in the face because he totally forgot about it, because he did the opposite of what happened and used the timeouts in an ill-fashioned form where it just ended up hurting him more than help. So I get what his intention was. Unfortunately, it was not the best time to use it. There were positives. There were some negatives. Melvin Gordon not staying inbounds and going out of bounds, because to me, I felt he was trying to, get to that 1,000-yard mark. So he figured if maybe stop the clock, then, they would give him the ball more. And the fact that the Broncos defense, being as beat up as they were able to get 4 turnovers, and the Broncos offense going out there and not being able to capitalize on points also hurt hurt the team's chances on winning. So even though the Broncos lost, the silver lining was at least they didn't pull a Philadelphia. They didn't, just go out and give us that sorry excuse or sorry team. I hate to say that we saw towards the end of the Buffalo game. It was a team that went out there, and whether they're coming back as Broncos next year or not, they went out there, they played, they put on tape, and they tried to end the season in the best note possible.
I would definitely agree with that. And one of the bright spots too was the fact that Judy bounced back so well. That 92-yard play was just amazing. I said in my comments after the game that I was kind of embarrassed that I was so indifferent about the game at the beginning, mainly because it was meaningless. It was the first time I've ever not really cared about if the Broncos won because they actually could benefit. It was almost in their best interest not to. But then as you saw the effort and they were playing so hard and the team really was doing a nice job, I got totally into it. And in retrospect, it's a great way to finish, with the exception of it being a loss, only because people that had struggled did well. So they're going into the offseason with that. And we end up with the 9th pick not only in the first round, but every single round, which has a huge value. But it sounds like we're turning around and then going to be trading it immediately to Houston but that's for another story.
I looked at it in two ways, pretty much. Some game for the rookies to go out or just the young players to go out and show something, pretty much, and exactly what happened. And then draft position. So did I want the Broncos to lose? No. But if they did, I wouldn't be mad because I'm a big off-season guy. But you had people out. Draymond looked amazing out there. Judy had some nice catches. Tyree Cleveland, they finally started throwing him the ball, which I was super excited for because he only maybe 1 or 2 passes he had prior to that throughout the season he looked great on. So I wish they would have. We just have too many receivers who don't know what to do with now. OJ Mudia, 2 forced fumbles. I'll take it. We have a lot to look forward to. I just wanted to see some, the young bucks go out there, have some fun, playing time, and just do their thing. And I think that's what happened. Locke, obviously, he looked okay. To be honest, the Raiders defense is the secondary is absolute trash. They were holding Judy on every single play. They looked like they had no idea what they were doing. So sure, they'll take it.
We tried hard.
Wow.
After free agency, as far as I'm concerned, we did okay. A couple players played a little bit better than I was expecting them to. Locke looked fairly good, but again, it's the Raiders secondary, so a rookie would have looked good too. Again, even their offensive line from the Raiders, they've been so-so all year, so there was not a whole ton that I took away from even Draymond and other guys that looked to be playing fairly well. I think that the better test of how they actually looked would have been against a better team like a Buffalo, and looking how they did versus them versus the Raiders.
Sorry, I was texting. I don't know. Obviously, it wasn't the same game that we had against the Raiders in the first time around. I definitely think that we fought harder. We played better. It's really hard to judge the defense, at the end of the season because they're missing so many players. That's not the defense you're going to see next year. It's the same scheme, but we don't even know what players are coming back. We're getting a bunch back from injury. So, we're on our 18th string corners. So, you can't really judge the defense on that. And it's like I said, most of the season, Drew Lock, I mean, he looked better. I wouldn't say. I mean, I was telling Glenn earlier today he's a good game manager right now, and that's okay. That's what we were looking for, was for him to move into there. So, I mean, I'm not going to get too excited. He's a good game manager on the most basic offense you can get. So, we'll have to see how it goes, and as we move into what's going on with the GM position right now, I'm sure we'll get back into what it means for Locke and what it means for people that we're trying to re-sign and all that. So, all in all, the game was just, I mean, it was a good game, but I always want them to win, but I didn't mind the loss. It just ticked me off that Fangio, like that first time out he took, I was okay with that one. But the one on the 2-point was stupid. Why would you do that?
I lost it.
Yeah, like I said, there was just a boomerang coming around, and hopefully it was. Even though this game didn't really mean much, I just hope that there was something that, it wasn't something out of Fangio's part that we could see in the future, because Fangio is not going to have that safety net covering him or helping him next season anymore. Every loss is going to turn that hot seat even more. Every miscalculated play or unused timeout, basically, the new GM, I'm pretty sure, is not going to be fond of it. He's not going to be fond of any mistake that any player makes, mind you, especially Drew Lock. So going back to what Mike has been claiming the last couple of weeks in terms of how much gameplay Drew Lock can see next season, it could be just half a season or even less if his gameplay doesn't improve and he keeps showing the interceptions and not winning games.
So what, obviously the big news coming out of the Broncos is Elway taking a step. I don't know if it's back, down, over, up, whatever it is, up.
And his idea.
Obviously that means that we have an open GM spot for the first time in 10 years, 9 years. So
10, yeah,
since 2010, yeah.
What are you thinking is going to happen when we get a new GM? I mean, there's some people that are Broncos fans that have only known Elway as GM. They don't know what goes on when a new GM comes in.
I mean, I honestly don't think much is going to happen. Everyone expects like this big blow up but I mean, you still have Elway above, you still have Fangio, you have your whole entire coaching staff. What GM is going to come in, and especially since he's literally worked for Elway and if it's Champ Kelly. If Champ Kelly comes in, I'm assuming things. If Champ Kelly comes in, who's worked for Fangio and Elway, you think he's going to come in and just ruffle feathers? I feel like he's going to come in and just kind of keep flowing with things. I don't see there being any huge difference. Maybe if it's someone that they're not as familiar with it, which I doubt.
Yeah. I'm not big on GM candidates. I'm not knowledgeable in that subject, but I agree with what Mr. Boggin says. The new GM is not going to come in and then just start cleaning house or firing people. I think that everybody's just going to be held onto a shorter leash. So there's not going to be that safety net with that Elway had with Drew Lock and Fangio and maybe even Joe Ellis, or even with the Bolin family for that matter, or for what remains of them. So the new GM is just going to come in and see how things look next season, and they're not going to be afraid to make changes if need be. At least I think so. And that's, if the coaching's not working, if the offensive plays aren't working, if the quarterback's not working, all that good stuff, at least until John Elway and Joe Ellis finally get their feet out the door of Denver.
I agree with Boggins. I agree with all of that. I like you. I'm not very knowledgeable on who's the next up and coming GM. So just looking at it, I feel like Champ Kelly is more known in the Bronco fan world. So he's getting a lot of push right now, and he's getting a lot of hype. And I just want to make sure they pick the right candidate for it, and not just somebody who's, who they've known. I don't know.
Well, one interesting thing was that they did say, I mean, there were the parameters of the GM search are pretty interesting in that Vic has to sign off on the GM, which is really kind of unusual, especially with a coach that has a record that's losing. And I mean, everybody knows I do like him as a coach, but the fact that they made it clear that the GM's going to have total say in the roster is an interesting point. I mean, that was one of the things that they really emphasized that day when they made that announcement. So we're going to see some different types of, depending on who comes in, I think we're going to see some different types of moves. Elway never moved up in the draft. I mean, we could find a GM that's an aggressive GM that wants to make a stamp right off the bat.
More Bama players.
One thing, what's that?
More Bama players.
Yeah, we just finally started getting some. Time for John to leave, but that's what I'm looking forward to seeing who's. We've seen the list of 5. It's surprising Adam Peters and Louis Riddick are not on that list, but we'll see if they get added. But it sounds like the Broncos, because of all the openings around the league, are really trying to fill that position quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have any favorites going in?
George Payton from Minnesota is somebody that's always courted around the league. He's turned down a lot of opportunities to move on as a full GM. So if he ends up taking the job, that would be very, very interesting. With Fontenot out of the Saints, and Mike and I have talked about this, is that he, when you look at a team that's successful like New Orleans and has that type of talent, you always are intrigued by the type of person who has their eyes and hands on bringing that talent into the mix. So he would be another big candidate.
I think that's my favorite going in. I just think because John Elway wants a fresh pair of eyes for the team. I think I look through all of their accomplishments of what they have going on for them, and I like I don't know how to say his last name.
Fontenot.
Yeah.
Fontenot.
Yeah.
That's my favorite too.
Fontenot is?
That's my favorite too. But see, I'm perhaps far more pessimistic than maybe anyone else here. My problem that I have with all of this is I'm looking at this as from a very skeptical position. I'm not convinced that Elway is not going to continue to kind of try to perform his standard duties, if you will. I actually think that if the team was truly dead serious about wanting to change, one could argue the culture now, which, I mean, having lost 4 seasons, going on maybe 5, I think that if you truly wanted to change that culture within the building, that you need to basically treat Elway as, I know it's sacrilegious as a Bronco fan, but to basically treat Elway as any other GM and any other person and say, look, you have not performed, the door's that way, we will welcome you back in the building because you're playing days, but hey, it is what it is. And so with that in mind, I'm not convinced that the Broncos are going to look at this potential GM candidate as a long-term option. There's a large part of me that is truly looking at this as saying, is this a one-year deal? Like, are they looking at this as, court cases going through the ownership piece, and we're probably looking at maybe even selling the team, and then therefore this GM is going to be a wonderful placeholder to appease fans to say, look, we're trying, and then eventually be shown the door with Ellis Elway, and everybody else.
That could happen.
I'm just saying it's possible. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying I
that's an interesting theory, though.
Yeah,
I mean, Elway takes a lot of the bad credit and whatever you want to say for a lot of things that happen, but everyone has to understand that he has to answer to a boss right now. And so, like Rich was saying, just having a placeholder there while all of this business goes down kind of saves face for Elway. And so when all of that goes down and happens, then he can return to doing whatever it is that he wants to do. If he wants to stay doing his whatever job it is they give him,
golf,
or if he wants to go back to, I mean, as I read and looked at it, it was the GM has the say over the roster, but Elway is the one that's going to be the main, that makes the decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but is the GM going to have say over the purse strings?
Well, from what I read and from what I could see was that the Denver GM position, the GM has final say. Yeah. And there's not a lot of teams that give GMs final say. So that's one of the reasons why it's an attractive kind of position for the Broncos.
That's why I think I kind of agree with Rich in the fact that, like, what Elway did was smart for his own self as well, is jumping out like a year before his contract's up. So he's trying to like get away from that big news. And then he's also putting, like, Fangio is having a say in who the new GM is, also like dispersing blame a little bit. And then once you have a new GM, they've said that he's going to have the Matt Russell and John Elway's position pretty much, to where that when we started drafting better, it was because Matt Russell really started getting more involved. But now they're just they're just making it into one person instead, and both of them are leaving pretty much, and Elway is just kind of washing his hands with it. I don't know how much Elway is actually going to be involved with it. I think he's trying to steer clear as much as possible, but I think that a GM will still come in semi-intimidated and wouldn't like change up a bunch of things at all. But I think Elway has one foot out the door. I mean, Russell's gone. Ellis was even willing to say that he doesn't see himself past 2022 or whatever. Like, yeah. I think things are really going to explode once we have new ownership. I think once new ownership and no one's still there to really hold on to anything, to new ownership is going to come in, and even if it doesn't matter who the GM is, they might just be like, nah, new one, and just shake the whole thing up.
Yeah. Well, taking a quick break, I want to welcome in everyone that's in chat. Richie, thanks for being in the chat. Biggie Bronco, Chris Hernandez, Steve Griffith, George Moravi. He had a good comment here. He was saying, where to go? Oh, right here. Fangio better get on Madden for time management practice. That's pretty good. Okay, so Steve Griffith, and we were kind of talking about it, saying, of the GM candidates, who do each of you want to get the nod? And this is one of the things I was going to go into. This is like one of the differences between, say, this pod and some other Broncos pods is none of us are like writers or sports writers or journalists or anything like that. We're all fans coming in and talking Broncos. And when I think of GM, I mean, I don't know the intricacies of what the GM does. All I can do is look at the team that they came from and be like, okay, I like how that team looks. They had to have some part in that. And so for me, if you're looking at the GM candidates, Peyton is coming from Minnesota. They're okay. I'm not a fan of. No. Oh, okay. Yeah, no. I'm not a fan of the $84 million guaranteed to Cousins. That was stupid. I don't know if he was around for that. But I mean, the only one that I like is Saints. I mean, yeah, you can't look at the Saints roster and go, oh, well, that was a mistake. Or, Well, that's a terrible player. I mean, and plus he comes from a background of working on the draft, working on scouting, he's the one that goes out and compiles all the final scouting reports to give to the GM and then helps in the draft. Like, that's the kind of guy you want, isn't it?
Former player too.
Yeah. So, I mean, isn't that the kind of guy that you want, is a guy that can come in and build through the draft?
I mean, Vikings roster is pretty stacked.
Okay.
There's a lot of very good players in the Vikings.
No, there is. I'm just saying, like, consistency-wise, like,
Dalvin Cook, Thielen.
Saints have been good for what?
They are stacked
on offense. Defense is a whole.
Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith. You can keep going. Like, it's just, they just got rid of Xavier Rhodes because they couldn't afford him anymore. They're loaded.
Yeah, they do have Dalvin Hunter, who's one of my favorite pass rushers, and unfortunately he got hurt.
Donnell
Hunter. Thank you. Fortunately, he got hurt. So on the Vikings defense, I'll give them credit. They got injured on defense more than offense, and unfortunately, they couldn't find the balance. One cover the other, type of thing. But going back to what Mike said earlier about us being fans and not being sports analysts and not being able to, at least on my part, I've seen some of the names that were mentioned. The guy from the Saints that Rich was talking about, Champ Kelly from the Bears. If I had to guess, and they're letting somebody like Vic Fangio put in his say, I would think that Fangio, so far from what we've seen in the last 2 years he's been in Denver, he usually brings in people that he feels that he's had a connection with, whether it's his days in Denver or in San Francisco. So I would think that he would feel more comfortable working with Chad Kelly like he did in 2017, 2018, than if any other GM candidate. So I would say that the Broncos would lean more towards Champ Kelly, especially if they go towards an approach that, like Mr. Boggins said, what Rich said, where everything could change once a new ownership comes in and they decide to clean house. So hopefully whoever the new GM is can do a good enough job that when new ownership does come in or gets renewed or whatever, that they've done enough of a job that they can, solidify their job, and we're not back to this square one in like 2-3 years.
I guess I want to bring in, if I can, to tie back into that. Unlike Mr. Boggins, I actually think that Chicago has actually done a pretty good job of building their team as well. I question the whole assessment on the Vikings because they're average, in my opinion. But it's certainly their record shows that they're average, so that's all I have to go by. But when I look at everything else that the other guys are doing, there's a part of me that's also wondering if we should even let Vic have any say in it until he starts winning. So that's another thing. But just on the GM search, I haven't heard it brought up too many times, but if this trust, the Bolin Trust, truly does think that Brittany Bolin is the front runner and leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, to take over ownership, then why is she not in any of the interviews? I mean, like it makes
peripheral. They said
if I'm a would-be owner and I'm sitting there in the building, and then I have this guy telling me that I'm not going to be there for the interviews, first thing I'm doing is coming up publicly and saying, this person's a clown, because technically speaking, in the next year, I could be that person's boss. So either she has no interest in ownership, or she's quietly sitting there, kind of like something I might do personally, and wait in the weeds. And then the first day on the job, trot him out publicly in front of the cameras and say, "You're fired." So that's the one thing that I took away from a lot of these pressers and stuff like that is, where's Brittany in all this?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuck out for me too, Rich. And it made me wonder if the trust is just going to demand the team be sold in advance of the trial happening. Quite honestly, I think they should have already done that. I mean, there's no resolution that's going to come that's going to make everybody happy on the family side.
Correct.
And they really, I mean, the family has really just botched it. And, you need all these people to sign off on one person to run it. So I would prefer that the trustees just wash their hands of it and say, it's over, Johnny,
Right. The other element that I am curious about, because Beth and Brittany actually have very similar qualifications when you look at their resumes in terms of what they've done in terms of football and other elements. I'd be very, very curious to see, because one thing Beth hasn't come out and said anything about is if she's tried to come into the team, if she's tried to, work with the team and do certain things, because that would actually be very interesting in terms of court case. If Beth has actually made an attempt to put herself in a position to take over the team from that perspective, and the trust has said no, that has some legal implications in terms of the trust not allowing her to try and fulfill the stipulations of the trust.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see here. Chris Hernandez, big question. What makes the Denver GM job desirable? With those thoughts in mind, got to find someone that's a fixer. That would be their drive for pursuing the job. I mean, obviously, the history of the Broncos, one. I heard that the fan base would be one, unless you're talking about Drew Lock, and then good luck.
Only Mike can bring Drew Lock in that.
Right.
And like I said before, having the final say is and especially because with Elway, it looks like he's leaving. Not this year, but I don't even know how much he's going to be involved. And then Ellis, what is it, March 2022? That's when it expires, and he's not re-upping his contract. So, I mean, you got a GM with final say. They basically got run of the house. So, and there's 32 teams, so that means there's 32 jobs, and that's it. So if you get offered a GM spot, you're going to take it.
Well, we also have a lot of good players, too. So it's not like it's a Jacksonville Jaguar situation where you do have the first pick, but you have a lot of holes to fill. We do have a very appealing just from our roster situation. We don't have a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah. So me personally, if I would say my top two would probably be Fortno and did I say that right? Or did I say that wrong?
Fontenot.
I said Fort. Fontenot. From the Saints, and then personally, I'd say Peyton, but I think with Vic being part of the interviews, I think that gives Kelly a leg up because they know each other.
Right.
Ask Gangarella how knowing Vic goes.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. That was my
Okay, Christopher, Deshaun, it's not gonna happen. I saw all the rumors about it on Twitter and on social media. It's not gonna happen. Number one, I don't think Houston's gonna let him go. I don't care what GM they sign. And two, we can't afford that contract. Like if we can't afford Stafford, we're not gonna afford Deshaun. Sorry, not gonna happen.
It's nice to dream, though.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy that some people are willing to sell off everything for that.
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
If it was an option.
I mean, I've seen people.
Rounds, take it.
I've seen people posting like future first round picks, Von Miller, along with everybody else, and it's just it's silly to me.
I mean, I'll say this: like, if Deshaun Watson becomes like they actually are going to trade him, absolutely go in on that. I just don't think they're going to trade him. I think that's a non-starter.
Take my money.
If he becomes available, go.
The only way we could have gotten Deshaun Watson is if Bill O'Brien was still there. Then we could have traded him. Royce Freeman and the second round pick.
Bubblegum.
Bubblegum. But unfortunately, you're not going to get that from who's ever in charge.
Trade Watson for Driscoll and a 7th round pick.
Yeah, pretty much.
There we go.
And I don't know about the three GM or the GMs that are coming in. I mean, they all have perks for me. I honestly don't think they're going to be whoever comes in is going to be around that long though. But I mean, I really like the Vikings roster. The Saints roster has been up and down, but and then Champ Kelly, just the familiarity of knowing the coaches and so he might just like meld in real quick. So there's all pros and cons to all of them. I'll take one.
And you've never heard a negative thing about Champ Kelly professionally or personally. That's one of the things is that they talk about on the personal side, how nice and how smart he is. So just, the guy's just would be very easy to get along with, it sounds like, in that building.
His name is too close to Chip Kelly. When they said Champ Kelly, I was like, holy crap, the coach? That's going to be terrible.
Max called him Chad Kelly earlier. So, I mean,
so I'm torn on, because normally when you have a new GM coming in, that means bad things for coaching staff, expensive players, and quarterbacks is normally what that means. And I don't know, because like if ownership wise, if they go with Brittany, who was she's there but she's not there, I kind of think that whatever GM they bring in, if she's there, they're going to keep them. But if they go different owner, they sell the team, normally an owner is going to want their own front office, their own staff, their own, they want to make it their franchise. So I'm torn on what's going to happen. A lot of it depends on this season. I don't think a whole lot's going to change. Unless you get one of those ones that's like, get rid of everything and start over, which I don't think is going to happen.
I think people keep falling into this like normality of what usually happens when a GM comes in. This isn't a normal situation.
Yeah,
like your GM's still there, but you don't have an owner to hold anybody accountable. You still have your head coach. You still have all your coaches, even your trash special teams coach. You still have everybody, and then you're just kind of like literally coming in and putting a GM right in the literally in the middle of all of it, and just be like, good luck. We don't have an owner, so we'll see if you're here in a year and a half. Like, it's just a weird limbo. It's going to be, I feel like we might be more limbo next year than even this year. So it's going to be cool.
I mean, I think
stuff.
Did anyone else find it strange that Joe Ellis had a whole press conference and then decided until the next day to announce that this was his last year with the team? Didn't that seem like a timing,
Yeah,
maybe he didn't want to take the light.
He wasn't sure.
He just passed a note to a journalist afterwards.
Yeah, maybe he didn't want to take the shine away from Elway.
Oh, he looked at the reviews afterwards and then realized that he had all negative ones, so he decided to give his notice after the fact.
He got back to his office, a flaming bag of poo on his porch step.
Reading all the comments.
Wait
a minute, the fans didn't buy the fact that this was an actual promotion for Elway? Okay, well, I got to go.
What about Matt Russell's retirement?
Well, and I think it was it Huddle Up that was talking about it yesterday, that was saying that it was potentially a forced retirement, like either you retire or we fire you, which makes sense. But I don't know. I mean, would you want Russell as GM anyways?
I mean, since he's been involved, we've drafted very well. I mean, the last 3 years, it's some of the best drafts we've had in a while. So,
I agree with that, definitely.
I mean, I don't know.
So I think like the biggest question of this whole thing is what's going to happen when we hire a GM. And like Boggins was saying, like next year is probably going to be the year where everything gets torn apart, or everything, we don't know what's going to go on. And a lot of that has to do with ownership. But as far as it stands right now, do we foresee a situation where we're keeping Tim Patrick and we're keeping Von Miller and we're paying Shelby Harris? Like, are we still thinking that we're going to do what we hope they're going to do? Or is this going to be a blow them up and go get your own kind of situation?
Yeah. What would be your top three things that you would want the GM to do?
Me?
Sure. And everybody else.
Number one would be to get a backup just in case, it's like quarterback. Because with the injuries, that's where everything seems to spiral. It fits magic. But I think getting a backup quarterback, because you never know. Shelby, pay Shelby. And I draft a linebacker. Those would be my three things.
See, Rich is going to jump all over me, but one of mine would be Justin Simmons.
No, thank you.
Me too. I was just gonna say, what about Simmons?
What about him? He's on another team.
I don't get the
What
hate.
do you like about him?
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that.
So I posted a couple GIFs. I'm good with editing and extracting stuff from film. So I posted a couple GIFs and stuff on Twitter. My issue is I actually was hoping this was going to come on the pod today because I knew I knew if no one else, Glenn was going to hold me to task on all my comments on Simmons, right? So basically where I'm coming from on Simmons is, since we're keeping Fangio, I do not believe Simmons is a good fit for what Fangio likes to do. And with that in mind, I don't think it's worth us keeping Simmons at the price tag he's going to be commanding, because I believe there are better, cheaper options out there that will fill that role for us. Now, on the flip side of that, I hate, I think is an appropriate word, the tackles that I'm seeing from running backs that are just blowing by him, and Simmons' lame little attempts at bringing them down. I'm looking at the
Jackson and Simmons do the same thing.
Well, no, but Jackson's issues aren't necessarily his lack of attempt at physicality. Jackson's issues are as a result of poor angles on his tackles. Simmons goes to take the angle that's proper, but then he tries to bring him down with his right hand. And these running backs are so big and they have a lower center of gravity. Like, they're generally between 5'11", maybe 6 foot at the most, and 220 pounds or so. They literally just brush him off, and then Simmons left there, running after them, saying, "Gee, I hope I catch you and bring you down," and it never works. I'm sorry if that's too critical for some people, but that's what I'm seeing.
It's the motion. It's the Baywatch slow-mo that we just saw.
Well, yeah, it's literally like watching Hasselhoff, except with a shirt on.
I think that best example was his missed tackle against the Jets when he couldn't take down Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold is so fast.
But that's the play that comes to mind while Rich was talking. And first it was Alexander Johnson that missed it, and then it was Simmons that missed it, and Kareem Jackson, I don't know why he didn't even try.
He's third on our team in tackles. He's third on our team behind our starting linebackers, who literally stand in the box and wait for people to tackle.
Yeah.
He's one of my absolute favorites. And he's had
a playmaker.
He's had his team all under Fangio.
Don't look at me. I fight about Locke. I don't fight about Simmons. Don't look at me.
See, and just Glenn, on your point there about Simmons, I am completely decoupling the fact that I think he might be one of the best human beings I've ever seen. So I want to make sure that I'm not going after him as an individual. He is a fantastic human being and deserves absolutely. I want to see him as the Walton Payton Man of the Year. And if you look at my Twitter account, I've retweeted any option I possibly can to try and get more votes for him, because I literally think he's done, an unbelievable job within the community and all his charitable work. But I'm looking at his play on the field, and there are certain elements of it where I just don't think it fits what we need. And I frankly think we can use that money elsewhere on the team to make our defense better, particularly along the interior part of our defensive line.
I was going to say, with a new GM coming in, I don't know if the Broncos are going to be willing to pay him what he wants.
Exactly.
So,
but how much more would it be than he's making now?
He's looking, last I heard, around the $15 million a year mark on the average per year,
which puts him at what, number 1, number 2 safety in the league as far as pay?
So by all statistical categories, if you look at any other metrics other than tackles, he is number 3 or 4 or worse. And then the other things that I'm not able to find in terms of stats are the broken tackles I don't have like Pro Football Focus or any of these other things that you pay for subscriptions to get the kind of the advanced analytics on. But the one thing that I noticed in like the Buffalo game and in the other games that I posted some of those GIFs on is those arm tackles where he just misses and then they just run by him into the end zone. I don't know where those stats are tracked, but like I said, honestly, there's at least one of those a game.
You know what's also a fun stat? He has you know how many interceptions he has this year?
Right.
5.
You know how many the rest of the team has combined?
Fine.
5.
5.
Do you know how many cornerbacks we have on our injured reserve list?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
5.
Yeah, you can use both hands, actually.
Well,
High five.
come on.
I mean, I honestly see Denver moving on from Kareem Jackson unless he takes a friendly pay cut. But Simmons, he's not the greatest in terms of safety and how Rich sees him. But I like what Justin Simmons is, outside of football, just like I feel about other players in the NFL outside of their designated team playing. But I just don't know. Unless the new GM comes in and feels like you do, Rich, where it's like he can find Justin Simmons to be expendable, or they come out and say, well, we can only pay one person, big contract. It's either Shelby Harris or Justin Simmons type of scenario, or they can find a way to reason and pay both. But to be honest with you, I think that Justin Simmons, he didn't live up to the hype that he created from the offseason, basically when he was franchise tagged. And I was on board saying, hey, I always felt that if you're going to go out there and put yourself in a place where, you want to demand more money, you got to go out there and put some tape and say, hey, look, I'm worth the big contract. I put up this many interceptions. I made this many tackles. But I just don't feel that Justin Simmons did good enough to say, here's what I did over the season, pay me money. But to play devil's advocate, he also had to deal with an injured secondary where sometimes he had to be helping out the backups or be in places that he's not used to. So that could be called into consideration in terms of, contract negotiations in the offseason. But me personally, I do hope he comes back. And if he doesn't, then oh well.
And that's
been excellent though. Like in pass pro, Simmons has actually been well above average.
Well, and that's kind of what I was saying when we were talking about the Raiders game. Is it's hard to judge the defense for how they played because there's so many players missing.
Right.
So we know that Simmons can be, or if not is, a top 3-4 safety in the league. Like we know that he can do that. So it's hard for me to say I want to get rid of Simmons because we don't know how he would have played because of so many injuries that we had. We were struggling there at linebacker for a while because we didn't, once we got rid of Todd Davis, we didn't have a backup plan. Von Miller wasn't there, so we had to figure that out. And then we lost 18,000 cornerbacks, so we weren't sure what was going on there. So the number keeps getting larger every time we talk. I want to judge him for how he played, but then I don't, because if we had a healthy defense, we don't know how good he could have been.
Well, and like Rich was saying, Simmons didn't fit in with Fangio's scheme. And during the beginning of the season, we saw him struggle, and everyone was like, where's he at? Where's Simmons? He's not showing up. And then all of a sudden, he got kind of a vibe, and he started showing up, and he started playing a little bit better, and everyone's like, oh, Simmons is making plays. Here he is. So I think maybe part of that has to do with he was trying to feel his way around what Fangio's scheme was, and I think he did a good job of making that happen. And I think once everybody is healthy and back and playing, I think he can even be better than what he is now.
And the leadership, you can't, that's one thing with a young team, is that we need some level of veteran leadership. and we really didn't have that on offense. And with Vaughn out, we were lacking on defense as well. So Simmons did fit that role.
So here's a question I have for anybody that would know. If you get franchise tagged, does that count against the cap, or is that like a straight, just like a guarantee?
Oh, that's cap number.
That's cap money. Okay. Because I'm trying to
it is, because that's what they were saying with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because that was their big problem with franchising him that second go around, is that they were saying that they would have to absorb that as a straight cap hit.
Yeah, and the Cowboys their money's wrapped around their other players, so they're really gonna have they're really gonna have their hands full trying to move money around to say, here, Dak, we can pay you this much. And Jerry Jones, he's not cheap like John Elway has been known to be, but I don't really agree with some of these analysts that I've been hearing these past couple days saying that Andy Dalton is just as good as Dak Prescott. No, he's not. So I think the Cowboys letting Dak walk away and test free agency is like the stupidest thing they can do.
Well, the reason I ask is because somebody on the Broncos is going to get franchise tagged. And you already had Simmons playing on the franchise tag this year. So if you tag him again, that's even more expensive. So do they tag Harris? Do they tag Lindsey? Do they tag Simmons again? I mean, who do you think is going to get the tag?
I think Simmons, if he signs it, and if they are trying to maybe tag and trade him, because I think you gotta, if you're really going to get rid of Simmons, you got to try and get something for him. And I think you can tag him for the second time and then try and trade him off. But I mean, I'd rather not. I'd rather just get like a backloaded deal. That, I mean, I think he's a real good dude, and he's very loyal to the community. And I think like he would be willing to be able to fluctuate something that would be well. I mean, I think I'd be more worried about Shelby hitting the market than anything, because he's had a pop year, and last year he didn't get a chance to really get out and see other teams because of COVID and everything. So he might want to test the market more than we'll let Justin Simmons. And I think a new GM that comes in is going to be like, of course, we're going to keep Justin Simmons. And Von Miller, I think, has such a power about him in the community that I don't know what GM wants to be that guy that comes in and buy Von Miller. Like, I don't
Elway said that he was going to take care of the Von Miller piece in his response, or one of the responses he had. Yeah, he came out publicly. Anyone else here, feel free to fact check what I just said there, but I'm pretty sure I read and heard that he said in a direct response that he was going to be handling the negotiations and discussions with Von Miller.
Specific. Interesting.
So I know that he said that he wanted them to retire a Bronco, but
he did. Yes,
I think it's no coincidence that the Broncos picked up the tab for a private jet for Shelby.
Exactly.
If it was Bosby's wife, they probably would have gotten him like a Greyhound bus ticket or something.
Bus ticket.
But the fact that we have the Jarrell Casey money to play with when it comes to Shelby, I think that plays to our advantage. I would think that they'll be able to work out a deal before free agency for him, and I do think that Simmons, even though his comments and his tweets and such did kind of seem like a goodbye of sorts. I mean, there's so many different steps that have to happen prior to that point. I think that they will work out some sort of a deal with him, and and if they do, ideally with a signing bonus of some sort that they can spread it out a little bit more.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we kind of touched on everything. And I think in the next couple episodes we'll dig more into what we think the offense is going to look like, and grade the offense and how they did and the positions, and then we'll do the defense. And we're not even going to grade special teams. That's an F- right off the bat.
That was another thing. Vic said he didn't see any coaching changes, and I'm like, he has to.
He said that last year too.
He has to be bluffing. He has to.
Yeah.
McMahon cannot be back. I mean, there's
McMahon's going to show up with a flaming bag of poo on his porch and I'm retiring. I'm done.
Limbo year, maybe.
All right, so let's move to the playoff games this weekend. Unfortunately, the Broncos are not in any of them. I don't know if that's unfortunately or not because this year was rough.
Do we have any corners?
Probably not. They probably all went on IR after the season was done.
Does anybody else, by the way, feel better about the Broncos a little bit after what the Bills did to Miami? Like, just
Holy crap.
wow.
Yeah, and
Because
they had all
didn't
their
have
starters.
Magic available.
And they had
My
all their
God.
starters too. So, and unfortunately, that opened up a Pandora's box for Miami because Tua was not able to be the guy that they envisioned him to be. And that's because of the coaching decision that he made, pulling him away from the Denver game, pulling him away from the Raiders game.
Get
So
it.
that came back to bite Brian Flores in the ass. And it's going to hurt that team even more if they decide to move on from Fitzpatrick next season, which it kind of looks like it might be, because I don't think Fitzpatrick wants to be in a situation where he only wants to be used whenever Miami is in a jam.
Don't
Tua
jinx
played
us.
that game like Locke played the first Raiders game. That was bad.
That was bad.
Was it 4 picks Tua had in that game?
Yeah, 4 picks.
I think he'll be fine.
He's like the Texans in this draft. 4 picks.
Less than
all
Justin Simmons.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got
right. 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 6 games. Yeah, 6 games. First one: Colts and Bills. Is there even a question?
Bills.
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 gotta go.
Well, hold on. Isn't Diggs and Beasley out?
Doesn't matter. Bills.
Are they?
Really? I think so.
What?
I thought
No.
I think they were questionable.
No.
I think they
They're
went.
questionable.
I think
I
they
could just be
were back
straight
at
up making
practice.
stuff up. So
No, I
Mhm.
think they were back at practice. I think that's
Yeah.
what I saw.
The questionable, I'll buy, but not doubtful or out.
Yeah.
That would really hurt the Bills' chance.
It's like the Patriots. They say questionable all the way up till the time, and then everyone's out full blast.
they still have Brady questionable on the Patriots
Yep.
injury report.
Yeah. And questionable is the closest thing to playing, is you can list somebody on the report these days. Probable is no longer an option. So
Right.
They should just put a yup option in there. Rams and Seahawks.
I'm gonna say,
That's a hard
Rams
one.
might not have Goff. Apparently.
yeah, I'm gonna say
Yeah.
Seattle just for the same reason that they don't have Goff. The Rams defense has been pretty good against Seattle over the last couple of years, but without Goff, I don't think that they'll be able to pull it through.
Rams.
I mean,
Really?
I'm gonna go Seahawks.
Richie Rich, look at you.
I think Seattle.
Yeah, they beat him like twice already.
I'm gonna go with Rich. I'm gonna say Rams.
And for the
I like to
record,
be different.
Brandon Staley has been asked to be interviewed for possible head coaching jobs already. So good for him.
Bucks and the WFTs. I will say WTF. And the Washington football team.
As much as I don't like Tom Brady, I'm gonna have to say the Bucks.
I can't see Tampa losing that.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm going Washington.
So am I.
I'm gonna say Washington too.
I would love that.
If
Yeah.
I will say this: if Washington can do what New Orleans has done to Tampa Bay twice, and that's pressure Tom Brady, where he doesn't have time to throw the ball,
He does not like that.
yeah,
No,
he does
not at
like
all.
that. And
He
he's
can't.
doing the exact same thing Peyton Manning did towards the end of his career, where he just falls on the ground.
Right.
Isn't Mike
He
Evans out
cannot
What do
too?
you
play
think Vince Young's gonna
when
do?
he's
He's
pressured.
gonna have a
Mike-
day.
Is he
Yeah.
out or is he back?
I think Mike Evans wasn't he out still?
He
He got
got
hurt.
No, he's back. I thought I saw that.
Haven't they had like a major receiver out the entire season?
Mike
though?
Evans might be.
Either Godwin or Evans or Brown or
He's also
somebody
been
was
super
out.
inconsistent this whole season.
Yeah.
Is anyone else irritated
I
that
used to
Antonio
date
Brown
Evans.
is having success there?
Eh,
Not
he's
really.
not Steelers Antonio Brown anymore. So
Mm-mm.
I hope he got like a brain scan or something because he went a little fruity cake there for a while. Titans Ravens.
I think the Ravens are out for redemption, especially after getting embarrassed last year. And the Titans defense is even worse than it was last year. Last year, at least they had Jarrell Casey, going up there and interrupting Lamar Jackson, but they don't have a pass rush at all. So, Ravens.
I was
I'm gonna say Ravens.
Titans.
Ever since like the Lamar, what's up? Ever since like the Lamar Jackson poop break, the Ravens have been playing pretty good.
Yeah,
offensive wise at least. So I think
they're the number 2 offense.
I definitely think Ravens.
I think Titans because the Ravens have yet to do that.
I think Titans. I think Derrick Henry is a
Bobbins, and I agree.
Love that guy.
Underdog.
Saints and Bears.
Saints, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like the Bears to upset the Saints, especially since the Saints have been upset by the same NFC North team 2 years in a row. So unless Trubisky can bring some of that magic he had against Jacksonville and and Cincinnati, I'm going to have to say, I'm going to go Bears. I think the Bears can win it.
Can't switch.
The Fontenot Kelly Bowl, they call it.
Yeah, winner gets the Broncos.
I'll go Saints.
Same. Saints.
Yeah, Saints.
I want the Bears to win just because I really hate Peyton. But I think the Saints are going to win.
Last one, and this is the COVID-19 Bowl. The Browns and the Steelers. The Browns who have like one coach on the entire roster right now.
The virus wins.
Yeah, I think Steelers.
Browns.
I'm saying Browns. I'm just gonna say it.
I mean, I wouldn't be mad if the Browns won, but I mean, on paper, it looks like the Steelers are going to win.
I would love if the Browns won, but I think the Steelers are going to drag race all over them.
Yeah, but the Steelers went like what? What they 13-3, 12-4. What were they?
13-3.
13-3, playing like the Jets 13 times. So, I mean, their schedule was weak.
Yeah,
I'm still waiting to see if Stefanski can just like call in plays since he's not like in trouble or anything. So maybe he can still call in plays during the game.
No, he's not allowed to address the team after they leave the locker room.
Oh, okay, in Steelers. No,
yeah.
I'm just gonna will it to happen. The Browns. I want the Browns to win. Do something cool, Browns.
Yeah.
They won me that Atwater jersey this year, so.
All right. Steve Griffith, Bills, and then he says Seahawks, Bucks, Baltimore, Saints. Rich, you already said yours. I'm not saying yours again. Yeah, George, you're literally
in the podcast.
Christopher, Bears will upset the Saints. That'd be fun.
He only picked the Bears because there was no fleur-de-lis emoji.
That'd be a thing. Hazmat suit on the sideline. Have Stefanski there. Good to go.
Actually, he'd be like, you ever see those Peyton Manning commercials, the Tide Pod, where he's rolling around in the screen and the little electric cart thing? That's what he'd probably be doing.
All right, so this was a very interesting pod. There was 6 people on here today. It was kind of fun. I liked it. We had a lot to talk about, but we didn't really get too deep on anything. We got a long off season, so we got a lot of time to talk about everything that's going on. But we appreciate each and every single one of you for coming in. Once again, and I'm not going to cover your face this time, Rich. We're live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. So go ahead and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at MHRT Podcast. Follow us on Facebook. And then leave us any comments, questions, concerns on either one of those. We're live every Thursday at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific. I got it down now. And again, it's going to be...
Now the season's over, yeah.
Now the season's over. Me, Christy, 6'10", Boggins, and Glenn, potentially every week unless something happens. but don't let it happen.
Unless I get fired.
But again, we appreciate each and every single one of you. Wish that the Broncos were in the playoffs, but they're not. So go Broncos anyways, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye, Rich.
Bye, Rich.
Bye.